Hello, everybody. Just getting oriented here. Give me a second. Had to move out of my normal studio. When the air conditioning stops, you got to move somewhere else. Couldn't get anybody out today. It's 100 degrees in Dallas today. So there you go. Trying to stop this cart here from moving. There we go. How's everybody doing today? Almost Friday. Working toward Friday. Weeks flown by in some ways. Of course, they all start flying by after a while. Well, I don't know if any of you got a chance to take a peek at the interview that was done with Chad Kasem. Sorry, I always say Kasem. I was thinking of Casey Kasem and Donald Fagen, and there was a reporter on there as well. I can't remember his name, but he was a third party on there. But it was kind of interesting, different to see Donald. Donald doesn't talk much. Donald doesn't, not in the public eye a whole lot. But he had some interesting tidbits to mention. A lot of history. It's kind of funny. I think he's when they asked him about what kind of music he likes a lot, that his own Steely Dan music isn't really on the list for some reason. Fred Kaplan, that's the guy. Thank you. Exactly. I guess he's been with Stereophile and some other magazines, and I heard him mention the Absolute Sound. I guess he's involved with them because he did ask a question on behalf of Michael Fremer, who's with them. So I'm sure a lot of those journalists are all know each other pretty well, of course. But yeah, so it was kind of interesting that Donald was not as much enamored with some of their own stuff. I'm sure it's like, you've probably heard that enough and you've done it enough. And he definitely said his favorite album is the last album they've done, which was the live one, I guess. So he doesn't live in the past, I guess, I would say, for lack of a better term. He lives in the present, and that's good. That's good. But it was interesting to see him. There certainly was some synergy between him and Chad on the kind of music that they like, and the history of, he even went into the cover. Chad went into the cover on the Nightfly and the record that was spinning on that turntable that's in that photo. I thought was interesting. I mean, I've seen it and looked at the cover, but never really studied it. So I thought it was interesting to do a little bit of a background search on that. So it's just kind of stuff you don't normally hear. The other thing that's kind of come up in the last 2 or 3 days, and I did a video about it in some way, was this issue of the pricing of these UHQR specifically, I think, because of the jump to 150. Now, the jump had occurred before with the Hendrix UHQR 33 single disc, 125, and then kind of blue from Miles Davis, 2LP 45 150, and then came the Steely Dans. And Steely Dan's, of course, came as a block in the sense that you could pre-order all of them as opposed to one at a time. So that does create a little bit of a sticker shock environment, I guess. But I feel like, that's kind of where it was, or the market was. And the timing it's not directly coincident to the MoFi thing, but it's in the same general quarter or 3 months, whatever is that, but certainly wasn't a response to it. But yeah, and it is a lot. I mean, I don't think anybody can doubt that, but I did a comparison of the value of money and what the cost of a UHQR was in the 82, 83 and $50, and what the value of money is now. And it's about $150 equals what 50 was then. So it's ironically very close to And I would argue you get more now in the sense you get 245 RPM, so that's going to sound better than the 133. Even though a lot of people don't like the 45s, just from a annoyance getting up and having to change it and not having the flow of one side versus the other. But the material you also get with it, the extra material you get. And Donald even spoke about providing liner notes to Analog Productions for these future releases. So that's interesting. Something above and beyond what you normally would have gotten with the album, or what would have come with the OGs, of course. But anyway, so that's a topic. Any other topics? I have drapes. No, Evan, I'm in a different room because the room I'm normally in is in part of the house. Our AC isn't working. We have two AC units, and that one, when I woke up this morning and went in that side of the house, I'm like, wait a minute, it doesn't seem very cool in here. And then I looked at the temp, and it was about 3 or 4 degrees higher than usual. And then I felt the blower coming out, and it's, I think, probably Freon, probably needs a charge. So no, this is a backup location, I guess. The Bat Cave. Stay cool. Yeah, this is the Bat Cave. But it did make it convenient because I've got my my laptop camera and TV and everything on this mount that can roll around, to different places. So all I got to do is set up a chair, and I'm ready to rock and roll. So that I've never really used that before, but it kind of worked out nice to be able to just be mobile and do something. So yeah. I think there's a contingent of folks that think that the prices have been driven up because people continue to buy things, and I guess that's always true in one sense, but nobody's forcing anybody to buy these either. So biggest takeaway, that it took 7 cuts to get thrill right. Yeah. Well, I would say it took 7 cuts to satisfy Chad. I would he's bit of a perfectionist, and I think he knows what he wanted. But I look at it this way. I some places can just get one and be done, and and they're like, okay, I got my lacquer, I'm done, I'll just make some mothers and fathers and I'm good. And I think he admitted this before. Actually, I say admitted it, he explained that before, that he did 7. I mean, I knew he did 7 because we talked about it when I was with him, so I've heard. It's not a new story to me, but I think I've heard it. But either way, didn't much or care about the releases. Yeah, and he didn't. He talked about the masters, and I think I made a inference maybe in this live last time about him or Walter sleeping with the masters under their pillow kind of thing. But the fact of the matter is the labels control all that stuff in most cases, and so he seemed as surprised as anybody that they had them or that they found them. So yeah. Yeah, they don't, how do I put it? They get into the minutia related to probably selecting who's going to do it, and their own, fiduciary gain from the transaction. They're very interested in that, obviously. But I mean, if you noticed in this video as well, when's the first release going to come out? Chad says October 28th. And they got to put in a cryon that says November 4th, right? Because that changed late in the game, because Universal, you never seen Chad so quiet. Yeah. 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 And then it was kind of like he and Fred were trying to, like, who's going to get the next question into him? Cause it was, like I said, you look around, you're not going to find a lot of times Donald Fagen's on camera. I mean, that just doesn't happen that much. And you'll notice at the end, at whatever 45 minutes, or he was like, okay, ready to go. He was ready to go. And I think Chad tried to sneak one more thing in at the end there. But yeah, I think that was a stretch for him, frankly. And I appreciate that he did it, but he wasn't in his comfort zone, I don't think. He aspires for survival. Okay, Dave, I'm sure there's a lot of things about a lot of people we don't want to know, and he's obviously one of them. But yeah, he wasn't. He was. I mean, I think he's been in awe a bit, with the whole. I think it was, back in 17 when he first met him, and you know, I guess I get that in a sense. I mean, obviously, Chad's met a lot of people in the industry, but you talk about a dream come true, and I think about it. I mean, even honestly for myself, I mean, I've been kind of waiting year, literally year after year, decade after decade. When are they going to release these high quality type, recordings, sessions onto something worthy of the sonics that were done, and finally, it happened. And what's ironic to me, just as a lonely old single person here, is I'm sitting there in the place where they're going to produce those, talking to the guy that did the deal with them in Chad Cassim. So it just, for me, it was kind of like, wow, you talk about karma or whatever, but I think, there's a lot of respect in the music industry for these people that are really craftsmen, I'd call them, in music. And and that's a that's a big deal. And they were they were talking about these speakers that I forget the name of them exactly, but they're really like thin wafer type speakers, and they're tall and narrow and thin. You look at them on the side and they're like this wide, and they blew a set of those. And I thought to myself, boy, those easy to blow a set of those. They're like ribbon type drivers, and they sound really nice, in a house and whatever, but they're not made to be, used in a studio, or used to be, pressed or pushed or whatever. But it reminded me of audiophile days back in the 80s when those were really hot. Um, and it's just kind of a reflection of how long it's been since, getting close to those kind of areas of what was popular back then and what was going on. And talking about these monitor speakers, because Chad has a set of those ACSs there that are Doug Saxa right in his office. When I was sitting listening to AB comparisons, they were right there, and you sit in his chair, and he's dead center of the two channels. And and they're very accurate. I mean, they're very accurate, and they can take some power, and just very precise. It's, you can see how you could AB, seven lacquers, you're going to get different sounds. And yeah, and I think that the other thing is that there are pieces of each of those records that have certain sonics that you look for, like he was talking about the low sax and dirty work. And it's hard to appreciate, how low that can go, and kind of stand alone in the mix when you hear it in a certain uh, certain tape or certain capability from a really close to the master kind of sound. Those are a lot more, they get you a lot more. You feel them, they get you in the gut a lot more than just auditorily to your ears. And that's the kind of stuff you start to get into when you get into these higher grade pressings and stuff. And even with, I'll say, average equipment, you can still get that feeling. You still can get that difference. I think that's what's really cool. So, Doug, hello, Mr. Osbury. How are you, sir? Good friend Doug. I did a couple interviews on with him. He has a great store called biglovevinyl.com that he sells from. Really good guy, good seller, good business person, good friend. And so thanks for joining, Doug. And so yeah, it was definitely interesting to just kind of soak a bit of it in, because there's a lot of I mean, I think I just was thinking today, I'm thinking, when have I seen Donald Fagen really, short of maybe in a concert where he says a few things between a song or something. He's just he said, they said something about his life between COVID and before COVID, and he kind of goes, well, my life's kind of was about the same. I'm a writer, I'm home a lot, I didn't really see a lot of difference. And Paul Schaefer, yeah, I do remember that one. That's been a while since I've seen that one. Yeah. Yeah. That's magnaplaners. My X is audiophile. Okay. Magnaplaners. That's right. Thanks, Nicole. I remember that. I do remember that. Yeah. So those were always cool, but uh, I could, Led Zeppelin didn't sound as great on them as some other stuff did. Classical jazz and even good, kind of lighter rock did. But yeah, if you were gonna pull out an RL version of Led Zeppelin 2, that wasn't exactly the best speaker to play on it. But uh, so yeah, so I guess I heard today. I don't remember where I heard it actually, but the date of the first album, Can't Buy a Thrill, is November 4th. Now I heard the second one is early in December. Is it Countdown to Ecstasy, I guess? Um, and I was a little bit surprised that because I guess they're going to be able to obviously get some momentum right now. They're probably pressing them as we speak, but because the general thought was that and maybe they're just trying to get two out before Christmas, of course, with Christmas holiday and all. But they were going to be about an 80-day window, 80 to 90-day window between releases, something like that. Um, and again, I think part of it is determined by how much they can, crank out as well. But I tend to think it seemed like Universal maybe has a pretty solid schedule or a way. Maggie's great for Wyndham Hill. Yeah, yeah, Wyndham Hill. Yeah, I've even got laser discs of Wyndham Hill with autumn and winter, and just you just see the great photography and video stuff that's done in that, and the music behind it, William Ackerman or whoever, and that's some unique stuff. A lot of that Wyndham Hill stuff, hold it up to the light. It's translucent. They use virgin vinyl on a lot of that, by the way. Um, that was done as well. So, and I don't know, some Sheffield was, I think, as well. Some of the stuff, I think, Doug, you showed me a Sheffield Lab the other day, but James Newton Howard album. I'm not check that out. It might be translucent, but there is a lot of great material that sounds really good on those kind of speakers. But they have their place, so it's kind of dependent if you have the luxury of having different kinds of speakers in your portfolio to be able to have the room for them, for example. So most of us have to just settle for a jack of all trades, master of none kind of a speaker. Yeah, and it's by the way, if you what speakers do you guys listen to? I'm kind of curious. I mean, I have Polk Audio is what I pretty much have used for quite a few years. I have a Studio Monitor 10s, and then I have the um, SDA, I think it's 11 RTA 11 real time array 11s towers that I use for my quad setup. 4 of those. So just always curious what kind of equipment people have, don't have. I mean, everybody has different budgets, has different capabilities. There's a lot of good equipment out there, and there's a lot of great. I bought a tube amp here recently, and I found that honestly, for my ears, I don't think it sounds as good on the Polks as what I heard it with what it was demoed with. So it does make a difference. I think, I don't, their compatibility, I think on solid state stuff, I think it's not, the difference isn't, but on tube amps, I think they really have a different warmth sound with different speakers. So, um, they just, they don't. Now, one thing I'll tell you, and you have tube amps, you probably know this. Tube amps, it's like you really need to let them warm up. I mean, it's like sounded so much better after it warmed up for an hour. When I first was playing it, the first 10 minutes, I was like, whoa, So that's another thing. I guess you gotta look. You watch your electric meter spin around when you turn on your tube amp, right? Start hitting breakers. But definitely once they're warmed up, they sound really good. And in the winter, they keep your room warm as well, I guess. But so those are the kind of things that are, I think they talked a little bit about, I think Chad mentioned something about Doug Sachs, and he was talking about Bill Schnee and some of these other mastering engineers. And Fagen had a great comment about mastering engineers. They always kind of want to find a way to add value to the process or something like this. And he says a lot of times it's just like, let it come across straight across from the mix, and let's see how it sounds, and trying to put another signature on top of it. And I think it was one. He said, yeah, there was one mastering engineer we had to kind of ditched because went to Bernie because he was trying to paint his portrait a little bit with what was made, and then that really wasn't sounding good to them. One of the conversation was the the gentleman that was there, Mr. Kaplan, Fred. He mentioned where he was in a studio with Fagen, and Fagen had made some very mild calibrations to changing, a flute or some kind of an instrument, a half a dB, and how once he made those 6 or 8 changes, how it all kind of sounded different at that point just by either bringing something up or putting something down to when you bring something down, it usually uncovers something else. And that's the art of the mix, because it doesn't take much for it to really, to lose something, or to gain something, whatever you're trying to emphasize in the message of the music, so to speak. So it's really it's really painstaking to sit in a studio and watch an engineer do their job with the material with an artist there. I've done it a few times, and it's a little bit daunting, because it can get very personal, I guess, in the sense that they really have an image in their mind, and it's kind of a balance that gets struck between, does it need to be re-recorded, or is it there and it just the mix isn't bringing it across, and that becomes a little difficult, because there's times when the musician, they want it so bad they'll redo it, and then they don't like that, and then they get in this cycle of trying to squeeze that last drop of water out of it. And it can be a little painstaking, and engineers have to have pretty solid set of cojones and and be able to accept some of the wrath they're going to get, because it gets a little delicate. There's no doubt. Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, Bernie. Yeah, and that's really, but the thing, and the thing is, I think listening to some of these more senior guys, that's part of the issue of what they take on. In other words, what jobs they take on, because if you get something that's really problematic out of the gate, what can you do with it, and then you're not really satisfied. So, taking something that's really well done and doing very minor tweaking, if any at all, is a lot less pressure, I think, and a lot less, there's a lot less conflict that can go on with that. But like Chad said, you can't make chicken salad out of chicken shit. So that's why he doesn't do a lot of the things that are, newer or whatever, because for him, it just doesn't do it. And there's the dog, and that can't be the mailman. So never know what she's barking at. But so I think that's a genuine conflict that exists, and it really is important that there's a good working relationship in those between engineers and artists and producers, and then the mastering engineer. If they can get something solid right out of the box, then in fact that makes it, I think, that much easier. And then the pros don't want to color it, really. That's the thing. But we had the loudness wars with the digital, and the all of the stuff that went on with that, and that really has created a bit of um, a new genre of mastering engineers, but not engineers of mixes, but mastering engineers. And there's almost a competition out there of how much they can do in that regard. How hot can they make it, or how how much can they provide something to really make, and the artists are in that too. I mean, they're really trying to make a stylistic statement in what they want on output. Whereas I think some of the older stuff, us old guys, as they say, I think we just, it's more, I think the investment went into the upfront work. But things are so easy to do digitally today in the studio, and auto tune and there's so much digital layering in that they can go through that much more quickly now and lay it out there. And then it's just a different realm. It's just not the same as it used to be. And it works for the audience that they have. And I think that's just the market. That's just the way it is. That's change over time. But to expect some of these labels to take that on. Hey, John, how are you? To expect some of these labels to take that on in terms of reissues and saying, that's what we want to do. I think that's, a little bit out of their scope of who they are. So as Chad has said, it's kind of like if other companies, other entrepreneurs want to do it, they'll help show them how to do it, how to make higher quality product and how to do that. A lot of times they don't want to make all the effort to take all the steps that it takes to get there. They want to start shortcutting and that kind of thing. So mastering engineers, Kevin Gray's a great one, Grunman's a great one, Ludwig, Ted Jensen, Ryan K. Smith is a great one. One of my greatest, not mastering engineers, but mixing engineers is Humberto Gatica. He has done some really great engineering mixes on that end of before the mastering engineer. He's done some great stuff. I really have enjoyed David Foster, obviously. Has been really great on the production end and the engineering end. But those guys that I mentioned, they're my, the ones that I look for. I will look if they have done a record, and I will try to find that version of that record. Like if you can get an RL of Rock and Soul by Hall and Oates, that's the one to have, for example. Well, he bought off on him, so I don't know, Lucky, if that's um, I think he was happy with them. Apparently, I mean, I know that he had to be bought off on them, and I think, as I'm not sure 100% of them, but I know early on, but I know that um, yeah, I know what you're saying. But I got to tell you, I don't think he's as close to that material as he was back then when he was doing it. So you're talking, you know what I mean? I think a lot of time has passed, and I don't want to say he's not invested in it as much, at least beyond the green. But I mean, it's just different time, different music. It's I don't think it's just different, I think. But Chad was starstruck, and luckily the tracking, I was there to keep things focused a bit. Yeah. Wish Bernie. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder, yeah, and that's an interesting thing about the DBX thing, and what Fagen would have known or remember from that. Yeah, that would have been interesting. But, it's not that still can't come up. I think it will come up with Bernie probably, but I think he said he didn't see anything on the tape or anything to indicate it. So you got to go upstream. So really, for me, it's like, where's Roger Nichols? I like to get Roger Nichols into this thing, is who I'd like to get in it. Actually, he's the guy I think that would maybe be able to shed the most light on it. Because I think he was involved in that end pretty heavily. So. Yeah, well, with an album name like Katie Lied, you just never know how things are going to end up. It's like my line about can't buy a thrill. I said, well, apparently you can for $150. I guess you can buy a thrill. I've always loved the title of that album. Probably a good sign Fagen mentioned about compression. He seems like minded. Yeah. Rock and Soul RL. You're looking for that one. Yeah, hit me up on the side. I may have a couple. I may have a duplicate of that. Is that Tim, University of Vinyl? I think that's Tim. You can hit me up, David at safeandsoundtexas.com. I think I have a double of that, by the way. So, tried to make Katie audio. Yeah, sometimes you can try too hard. That's yeah, that's one of my that one. And I think Katie Lyde's the one that has all the detail on the back of how they recorded it, even, which is ironic. Uh, yeah, I mean, yeah. Like I said, it's kind of, if you watch the end there, Fagen was about, I think he had his, he gave his 45 and he was ready to bolt. I think, that's something that I think that it was getting obvious to me, but he did engage pretty well. I give him that. I do think he did. Yeah. Yeah. The latest. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's where Parsons was smart. Alan Parsons was doing that, but also recording analog. He was doing both for quite a while. He wasn't, I think I read a thing where he said something about the old saying about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. He wasn't, um, I don't say convinced, but he just wanted a backup. He wanted something he believed in and had history with. So that's, I think, where he benefited from that pretty greatly. Yeah, they hit the wrong button. Yeah. Well, yeah, that it's like I was saying, I think last time we were on here that, back then it was like, oh, digital, everybody getting to digital. Oh, wow. And it was like the cool thing. And it was, but even like Fagen said, he said the method they used with, I think it's U-matic, he said that the Sony wasn't that great. The Mitsubishi wasn't that great. And that's why he went with the 3M. Um, so, some of these big players like a Sony, I mean, these are guys developing whole formats and, the system, the CD with JV. I mean, they're on the leading edge of that. And sometimes they're on the bleeding edge of that. But, and so they really try to push themselves into studios and other things and make it lucrative. And, they want to have that foothold in there. And you get somebody like Steely Dan that's going to really look at it for the sonics and not the branding just of it. But like I said, they even got caught up in it then. Yeah, yeah. I think what I kind of read was, I guess Walter kind of liked them and thought they were kind of the next big thing. But studio monitors are a whole different. It's a different kind of speaker, and it's got to be really flat, neutral. I mean, it really has a function to it. And again, it's part of the thing about when you start to use the stuff that's really kind of on the edge or kind of cool, and then does it really serve your interest for what you're really trying to do? Because some of these basics never change over time. Some of the surrounding pieces may change or can change, but the basics always end up remaining the basics. Alex the Truth Dickey. Now, Alex, did you really think that I was getting any albums for free? Because I was not. I am not. I will not. I saw that the other morning and I thought, oh, shoot. You said you were hurt. You thought I was getting MOVs. I'm promos. I'm not. I'm paying the bill. But anyway, you said you got the feeling that you had the least. Well, I mean, there's been some audiophile versions of that have been out. So, there's the bar's a little higher. You know what I mean? That's, I think, all he was really saying, actually. Um, that's what I took out of it, at least. You got the Cisco, you got the MoFi. Toward opening your wallet. Yeah, I know. Yeah, well, like, see, for me, the Petty Box isn't interesting because it's live, and I honestly I like very little live music. Frankly, that's just me. Um, yeah. Now, Revolver, I got because I got a discount on it through a coupon they offered to everybody, and I don't have a mono Beetle box, so. Uh, but yeah, everybody, there's plenty out there. That's the problem. It's more I would love to have seen him. Yeah, I would love to have seen that speaker blow up myself. Uh, Paul Simon Heart and Bones was digitally recorded. Yeah, I've got to pull out my old Rycooter Bop Till You Drop. That was the first digital vinyl ever done. And that's the only reason I bought it at the time. I took the articles out of the newspaper, out of stereo file that were about that, and he'll still have them in the shrink because that was the only reason I bought it. So I have to, yeah. You were just messing. Okay, thanks. I appreciate it. I thought maybe sometimes on those things you just don't know where people are going. But okay, thanks. Yeah, the Revolver thing, the remix. It's funny. There were two releases onto YouTube I saw. One was the song by itself, and one was like a promo with the song in it, Taxman. And on the song one, I lost the tambourines. I lost the cowbell. I didn't hear that hardly at all. Then in the one that was an ad, I did. So I was really confused. To me, it's like, why would you have different audio for those two? That makes no sense to me. That threw me quite a bit. Well, you can see the interview, obviously, but did they talk at all why they're using a tape copy for Asia? Um, I think the only thing they said, or that I even know beyond that, is they're going with what is the highest hierarchy they can find that exists. Period. So it boils down to that. Now it may be that what is above that was damaged or didn't sound good, or I mean, I haven't heard any specifics that said to me we ditched the original master in order because we had an issue with it. The implication I got was they took the highest hierarchy they could find that was available. So but I will ask Chad that specifically. I can definitely ask him that now that the cat's out of the bag, so to speak, right? Ah, that would be nice if there are tracks. Yeah, don't know. Yeah, it's on Acoustic Sounds. No problem watching it at all. You can go on there and watch it. Yeah, it's just I caught it when it first came on, and I kind of was watching for when it was going to come up between 3 and 4. Um, Salina being a good rhyming word. Yeah. Uh, oh yeah, the Revolver. Yeah, those remixes, when you're starting to get to some of those that were more limiting because of the amount of channels in the stereo, you're really starting them. It's you don't have as much flexibility, I guess I would say, and it's kind of like going back to the old making chicken salad out of chicken shit. You only have so much there to go on. So yeah, well, yeah, Tim, if you've got the 2014 mono, then yeah, I'm gonna, I don't, and so that's one I'll have now. That's not a peep about Skunk Baxter's new album that came out. Okay, that's okay. I didn't know that Skunk Baxter had a album come out last week. That's interesting. Yeah, some of the other guys that contributed to that group, various people don't get much play. It's Becker, Fagen, and that's it. And Michael McDonald, whatever. And there were some other folks in those earlier days. Yeah, Wilson, he does a great job, man. I love Chicago, and he did a remix of Chicago 2, and Chicago 2 never sounded that great in my opinion in the first place, and he really brought it out. Yes, he does some great stuff, man. Yeah, I'll have to look up that Skunk Baxter. I didn't know about that. Yeah, well, you're not going to get him on the Beatles with the whole George Martin legacy kind of thing. It's as much history as it is, capability, I guess I'll say. Just saw Porcupine Tree. Yeah. Okay. Didn't know they were touring. Yeah, I've heard a few things from them. Yeah. Well, that is cool that Skunk Baxter has something out. That is nice to hear. I did not know that he was out in doing anything at this point. I'll have to check that out. Yeah, he's kind of one of the unsung heroes of not just Steely Dan, but he's been involved in other things, and he's solid. He's kind of like a quasi wrecking crew kind of person, and there's a few of those guys out there. A rocket scientist. Now, I didn't know he was a rocket scientist. Maybe he should play some music for Elon Musk at this point and see where that takes him. It's not like music is rocket science, right? Yeah, there you go. Yeah, zero. Yeah, yeah. I don't. Yeah. When you think about all the people that could have done it, all the talent that's out there. But again, I think it's legacy, it's history, it's that's the draw. But are you really getting the best? Have a contest, right? Get five strong remixing engineers to take on various tracks, and then see who gets to do the catalog. But that would be yeah. I'm thinking here that's going to get you in trouble all the time. He has worked as a defense consultant, advises U.S. members of Congress on missile defense. Wow. And would you like to hear a tune while I'm at it? Wow. The Doobies was your first concert. Yeah, I remember. It's funny. I've got these T-shirts that are like the Doobies farewell tour in the book. The Doobies farewell tour. They have all these farewell tours, and then they come back and everything. It's like when my wife went to the George Strait thing. It's farewell tour like 5 years ago, whatever. And it's like, yep, he's back. So, yeah, Denny Diaz. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Those guys that were really core piece of this. Yeah, I knew who you meant. Yeah, they just, they just, it would be, I don't really know I have to really read the back. I just was reading the backstories of, how the band got started and how it got named. We won't go into that. Dildo. Anyway, so, it's, how they grew and incarnated into different sounds, and they they really got where they really just wanted certain studio musicians to come in, and that was kind of the way that I think they just started to go. I don't know. Has anybody heard that live album, the last album that he was talking about. It's like, I guess it's 2 LP live album. I know they were talking about his rendition of Ricky Don't Do That. Ricky, whatever. Ricky, don't lose that number. I was thinking the Hey Lucy joke with the Lucille Ball joke with Ricky Ricardo about don't lose that number. I don't know. As soon as I start saying it. Cool. Thanks, Tim. University Bake Off. Have fun. British Bake Off. Yeah, let me know. Send me a note if you want to talk about that RL Hall Notes, Tim. Thanks. You have yet to hear a remix that was better than the original. No, I have not heard that. Well, I will tell you that, and I don't know if you like this music at all, but I will tell you the Chicago 2 Steve Wilson remix compared to the original, to me, it's way, way better. And I mean, I've listened to that album since, it came out, and, I'm a big Chicago fan. And so I've kind of lived with what I consider a muddled mix for decades. And when that thing came out, I'm like, whoa, who took the cover off the speakers, man? It's like, who opened this thing up to precision and really could, what happened? You want to think what happened in the first place, James Gucciero was not really good in that area. That piece was not the sound of the band and the production of that what he was good at. But when it came to really capturing the sound, the music, and recording it and engineering it, that end of it just didn't seem to have a lot of focus. Yeah, John. Okay, thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's just night and day. I'd say Aqualung, same way. I'd say the Tull stuff, same way. Stuff that really wasn't recorded that well, and really opened it up. So I mean, he has a knack, and from what I understand, he uses digital. So I'm not, hey, okay. Yeah, the S mixes were pretty good. Now their stuff isn't quite as bad in the first place. I mean, it doesn't need it as much as, like, say, Chicago did and Tull did. So I think there was a little less margin, a little less improvement to gain. But I think he did eke some out. Even Rick Wakeman likes those. I've heard and read. So when the band finds it, good and not. Usually they just stay mum about it and take their licensing fees or royalties or whatever and just take them to the bank. Not a big fan of the Acme, mostly because I am so used to the OG mix. Yeah, I think the OG is dead sounding to me. To tell you the truth, I from a sound standpoint, none of them really do that much for me when it comes to Aqualung, to be honest. None of them are. I mean, even the UHQR with Chad. I mean, they used the original there, and I compared it to Steve Wilson, and it's like they're different, but none of them really. It's like that Chicago 2 thing. It really just is. I don't say night and day, but I mean, it really, the difference jumps out at you. Dan Plush TV Jazz Party DVD. Okay, you got to tell me what that is. The DCC of Aqualung? Is that what you mean, John? DCC of Aqualung? I've never heard that. But no, Lucky, what's that? Did that come with one of the albums or a separate thing? Dan Plush. That's not, I guess, Steely Dan? Is that what you mean? I'm not aware of that one. I'm still messed up about mastering and mixing. If all these guys are. Well, no, mixing has to do with taking the original multi-tracks, eight tracks or 16 or 32 or whatever it is, and the individual instruments and voices that are captured by each of those microphones or direct connections, and then retweaking the impact or balances of those. When you're remixing, you can do you can move things left to right some. You can, you have a lot more capability. I mean, you can literally move an instrument from left to right and from where it was before. You really don't usually want to do that, but my point is, it's raw. You can take the raw ingredients and rebalance where it goes. Mastering is usually you have that output from that engineer that's remixed it, and then they have a 2-channel of that, and then you take that and bring it to lacquer, and at that point you're making tweakings for the way vinyl sounds and the RIAA curve, and you're kind of bringing it to that format, just like when you remastered a CD or whatever, you bring it to that format, and you have to make calibrations, like calibrations through various equipment methods. And it depends what the equipment is, what the method is. It's usually simple EQ is not, there's not, they don't do a lot of that. That's, I mean, some of the stuff now with digital they do, but that really isn't. It's more to try to get it sound good on vinyl is really what it's about. Steely Dan DVD. Okay. All right. I just never knew the name, never heard of the true name of it there. So, so the remix, they can make a lot more changes to the way it sounds than remastering. They have a job doing something. Yeah. Yeah. Did I ever visit Canada again? Thanks, Evan. Yeah, I mean, I have, a couple of personal trips in Niagara Falls and been to Toronto and business. We have some facility. The company I work part-time for now, I retired from full-time, but we have facilities in Vancouver and Mississauga and Montreal. I also work with a company that's in Belvedere, is it, Ontario? So I have been up there a few times. I've not been back to where I was born in Quebec, that area. That ironically, I have not been back to. That's a bucket list item for me. Two Against Nature era. Well, that's good because, I mean, I liked. I didn't like that album as much as Everything Must Go. I think I like that a little better, but live performances, soundstage, it could be played as 5.1. Okay, if it's 5.1, I'm in. So I definitely like listening to stuff in 5.1. Meaning the ones who stay out of the way are the good ones. Yeah, that's exactly what it means. Yeah, I don't know what's these mastering engineers have backlogs like crazy. You gotta hope Bernie outlives his backlog. I don't mean to be cruel, but I just mean to be realistic and just say, hey, these guys have got, they're sought after, and they're picky. They choose what they want to do, just like Chad does. I mean, he chooses what he wants to do. He's I think he said, he's getting people now coming to him going, hey, we want you to do X, Y, or Z. And maybe he had issue getting it before, talking to him before, or whatever. And now all of a sudden his street cred has risen. So he's booked up pretty strongly himself, up to 10 years. So, I mean, it's tough. What cartridge are you using? Acoustics 410, I think it is. An Acoustics 410. It's a company that's not, it's from Europe, but I don't think they're in business anymore. But it's a really, it's just a unique sounding cartridge to me. I just really like the signature of it. I got turned onto it by a guy who has sold me some turntables, and he put it on one of them, and I was like, "Mo, okay, this really for me is the sweet spot. This really blends a lot of, you know how it is. Some can be a little bright, some can be a little bassy, come flat. This one kind of, I know this isn't true, but it seems like it almost adjusts. Almost, it really has a malleable kind of sound to it, and it really is compatible with what I hear, and just for me, it really works. So, So if I buy the DVD, do I have to give money to PBS or no? I'm just want to see if there's a trick involved in this. Mag Ioka 150. Okay, here's my opinion. Oh, 150. Okay, not 110. Sorry. Okay, I'll back off just a second. So I think the Nagayokas get better as you get to the 150 and the 200. The 110 to me is just too flat. It's too neutral to me for my hearing, and I have listened to it a lot of times because every time, it's kind of like been the last year or two, the big, this is the cartridge, this is the one for the money, but I heard a 150 and I really thought it sounded great, and I heard a 200, I thought it even sounded better. So that's good. Yeah, the 150, the 150 I would get, I think. But if I was going to get a 150, I might get a 200, but I wouldn't get a 110. That's just me. And not because of the cost or anything. It's just because it's just a little bit too flat for me. Yeah, now I got to go get that thing. Is that DVD sold just flat retail, or is it one of these Discogs higher price kind of things you got to get, or is it just in the market? Excuse me, because I will definitely pick one up. I'm actually gonna Dan Plush TV Jazz Party DVD. I'm actually gonna copy and paste that and search it and get it. Thanks for helping me spend more of my money. I really appreciate you guys. Amazon. That's on Amazon. Customers who viewed this item also viewed Two Against Nature. Doesn't show any available. Okay, guys, so how do I get one? Help me out here. Yeah, 11.4, John. 11.4. I told Chad, I said, don't ship mine. I'll be in Salina. I'm gonna go get mine handed to me. So you had a 110, Jerry. Okay. Well, like I said, they're all made for different people for different hearing, and it's all different. So that's the good thing, So I always qualify things when I say for me, for my hearing, for what I heard, that's all I can speak to. And that's all anybody can really speak to when you come down to it. Yeah, Jim Bennett. Yeah, they can affect the feel and the texture of how it sounds holistically, in the mastering, but they can't really instrumentationally, control and move things around at all. But they can, the warmth of how it feel, they can affect the nature of it in that format. But yeah, what's there, left, right, center, what's there, relative volumes. That's if they use a little EQ, they can make something maybe sound a little brighter, but they're applying that across the frequency. It's not individualistic against just an instrument per se. Totally different. Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, as soon as you heard DSD, I thought he was going to throw down his racket. Yeah, I forgot about that in the interview. That was funny. So, yeah, mastering it does make a difference. There's no doubt. I mean, it makes a huge difference, but it doesn't. it doesn't do the same thing as a remix. But yeah, bad mastering is that's the worst. I mean, you go pick up, like, go get a Brothers in Arms that was done by Ludwig, and one that's not done by Ludwig. Just go get the two, and they're just night and day to each other. So it's just the way it is. So so Amazon, if Amazon doesn't have it, eBay. Now I'm on eBay. It's going downhill, guys. I missed the. Oh, it's Australian, $37 Australian. That's okay. There we go. Looks like it's on YouTube. Maybe I can just watch it there. Oh, that's a start, but it's not what I want, though. Don't want to do it that way. I want to hear it here at the house. Uh, yeah, definitely want to hear it here in the house. Fagen did say he's written some new stuff and is about a few weeks away from going to a studio to start putting a few things together. So I thought that was interesting. Said he's going to be 75 in January, so it's time to do those things. Yeah, Jelly Roll. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't know if MoFi was ever in the run for the Steely Dan stuff. Actually, but because this discussion's been going on for a while with you know um, MoFi was working. They were working Eagles deals, of course, and the Van Halens, the Warner stuff on that end. So you can only do so much. So I mean, they had their big catalog releases that um, that they took on, and they were did it before Analog Productions did in that regard to have a catalog kind of release. But can't be all things to all people. Work all the deals, that's for sure. Well, there are other aspects I think to that, Jim, too, in pressing and the lacquer being cut a certain, at the way the lacquer's cut, the way it's plated and stamped, and the care that's given in the manufacturing. There are other aspects that fall into the end product as well. But yeah, they're not going to change the mechanics of the way the instruments are placed or those kind of things. But and some of these records, I mean, honestly, the gap between, let's Chad uses mainly OG promos to compare, because that usually is the earliest stampers off of production runs for labels when they're going to first promote it and get it to radio stations and whatever. So those are usually, historically, the white labels are the ones that have the best possible pressing. So you're comparing it to the best, which is probably a notch above what the general public would get, both in terms of potentially vinyl quality and stamper life. And so my point is, that's the kind of the cream of the crop of its time. And so you're comparing it to that and edging it up. So we're going to hear a little greater improvement, because typically what we get in the market are not OG promos. Um, and I've got a lot of Steely Dan Can't Buy Thrills, and I can compare them, and they're different. Different countries, different releases. They're different, no doubt about it. Some are bassier, some are brighter, some are more, vocals are more up front. There's differences. So, do you know if Donald got to your pressing as a first? Test pressing, yes. I don't know if it was honestly on the Clarity vinyl, to be honest with you. So I'm not going to say that. I don't know, but I'm sure he definitely heard the test pressings. That's for sure. Well, I do know Chad has the Cisco, so he's definitely a being the Cisco with with what he's doing for test pressings on Asia. I'm sure of that. Hang on here. I hope Donald is new. Yeah, that would be interesting. Quick spec, it would be. I don't honestly expect to see it, but it would be interesting. They just, I mean, they're very similar. I mean, in some ways, in their perfectionism and everything, but their genre difference is so different. It would definitely be a different vibe. Yeah, the vinyl quality will make a big difference. I agree with that 100%. I agree with that because I have an OG of I don't have a promo, but I have an OG of Can't Buy a Thrill, and it's a little noisy. It's not quiet. Let's put it that way. It's not quiet. Chad sold you your Cisco copy. Okay. Well, I'm sure he has several in his vault. Oh yeah, mastering. Yeah, mastering can ruin. Yeah, you could have the best engineered work in the world, and a mastering engineer can totally obliterate it. Yeah, just like bad pressing, bad vinyl, bad. I mean, the process of bad plating. It really it takes all of the. It's kind of like a great dish that's made. You have the right ingredients, the right timing, the right temperature, the right feel of the person doing it to know when to do what. It really takes kind of all of those choreographed elements to really give you the best output, and it's a lot more complicated than it looks when you just kind of look at the record and kind of go, okay, there's grooves in there. But it's just like doing these deals on the front end of the business process. It's the same way. That's a tough grinding kind of thing. I mean, it's and this one's complicated because you got Universal and you got what they're wanting to do on their end, choreograph everything coincidentally, and there's a lot of moving parts, and it doesn't take much for a deal to go south. Um, these guys aren't. They're playing for keeps, these guys, and we're talking big money. And you start looking at that big money and start dividing it up between the initial licensing and then the per unit money that's got to be put on the table for every unit that sells. And you got to put some upfront money in these things too. And so the cost is in there. I mean, it's just it's part of the economics of it. There's no way around it. Not to mention all the production, the inflation, and everything in the production cycle. Totally. Catch up here. Wow, what do I think? Wow. Yeah, I think you're right. And that Electric Avenue. Yeah, that's what I was just trying to say. It's really the sum of the parts. Any piece that really goes bad, demonstrably makes the next step harder to recover for. I mean, you can't take it back. You can't get it back. So you have to start with, I mean, let's take it from the very origin. Take a bad microphone, and you're recording a voice, right? And if you have a weak microphone and nothing, and then everything from there is going to be, it's never going to anything you do to make it quote sound better is going to be fake. You're gonna do something to it, right? So that's it's the same kind of thing in the whole, I call the sound chain, from the very start all the way through. Mastering chain is just from the master tape down to the media that it gets on. That's mastering. But you got everything from the microphone or the instrument itself and the connection to the board that determines, even the damn cables determine how good it's going to sound in that process. Well, Chad doesn't use a cutting lathe because Chad isn't mastering. Bernie Grumman is mastering and creating lacquers and sending them to Chad. Just to be clear on how that works. And I think Bernie's using a Newman V80 something plus or something. But anyway, that's how it goes. The mastering engineer cuts a lacquer, and that lacquer goes to Analog Productions, and Analog Productions then will plate make do a test pressing off of a stamper and do 5 or 20 or whatever test pressings of that. So Chad hyped up the BG. Oh, really? You own the promos? Okay, yeah, yeah. Well, I've heard a few of the promos, so yeah, yeah. I mean, Chad's that precise that I'll use the word anal in a nice way because he's that into it and uh, he's listening for it all. He's got that AB and putting the two back to back. Within a few seconds of each other, you're hearing what you just heard. Right next to each other, and so you don't have to remember what you heard. And it's two turntable kind of, so it's very quick to get distinctions made very, very quickly. And he knows what he's listening for. And that's why seven cuts on the lacquer for that to get it where he really wanted it to be. And probably the first one or two were kind of a macro sound of getting it a certain way, and then really started to zoom in on certain pieces, that like that sax piece in Dirty Work, for example, where you really are trying to really get cleared up or get the most out of something that what was there but lacking somewhat. So I think that's yeah. I mean, mastering involves spacing. It involves lead-in grooves where I mean, there's all of those kind of things. Um, I mean, there's just a lot of, I say a lot of dynamics. That's a pun, I guess. A lot of dynamics to that process. There's no doubt about that. And it's really, I think I did a video and I talked about this. I come from Europe and I was looking at a lot of the pressings I had, and the lead-in grooves on there. In the area, the little area you have where you have the lead-in before the start of the song, you'd have 8, 9 grooves. Where in the US you'd have 2, maybe 3. So they give that thing lots of time, lots of opportunities for that needle, that stylus, to catch a groove. And that, think about, if maybe your anti-skate isn't perfect and it wants to move here, it's going to catch a groove. In ours, in a lot of the ones in the US, if you miss that lead-in groove, you're into the beginning of the song. And that's why a lot of beginnings of records have a scratch in them or a pop in them. So the way you master and how you do that, those are just techniques that are done. And I found that very interesting because it really, it's a small thing, but it really, when you think of it logically and you look at what it provides a different landing surface and a different opportunity to catch a groove before it gets into the music. Smart, in my opinion. Yeah, I agree. Mixing engineers are overlooked because they're up in the studio and they're never, they're it's over and done when that happens. I agree. Now I think remixing has brought out a little more visibility because you kind of go, oh look, they can do something. They have that capability being upstream to do that. So yeah, BG's bacon is too blunt. Yeah, it does. And I mean, excuse me, I did a video on Karen Carpenter's voice, and I did pulled out some isolated video audio tracks of her voice that came out of some of the 5.1 stuff. And you listen to that, and you can hear her mouth moving. You can hear even my mouth. I can hear in this mic compared to the mic I had before, this Shure mic. Yeah, I mean, this mic was $250, and the one I was using in these headphones are $250 or $300. These Bose Quiet Comfort twos or whatever, and it does everything though. It has a mic built in. It has audio for listening and whatever. But it sounded terrible compared to this thing because it's made for this. That's what it's made for, and so those things, those characteristics, if they're not in the original painting, if they're not in the original thing, then they're not there. But you listen to that voice and that precision, and it just you get a whole different appreciation for the vocal. That's a good point, Jason. Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, yeah, she is. Yeah, yeah. I man, I remember the day. I remember what I was doing, where I was the day I heard she. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't. It was kind of like I don't know. The John Lennon thing was shocking, obviously, but you're living in New York. I mean, it wasn't. But like Karen Carpenter dying, I guess I didn't realize she had all those other, anorexia and all those issues that would just kind of like came out of nowhere. Yeah, I don't know, just really. Yeah, well, yeah, I could see our voice was voted all time best. Dan Clark audio expense headphone. Well, don't know about those either. Yeah, the remixes do reinforce all of that. You're right. It does. And that's where some of this stuff with the stuff that is done with the Beatles is kind of like, really? I mean, come on. We could do a little better than that, I think. Well, the thing that's amazing too about Karen is if you watch her in concert or on a TV show or whatever, her precision level to the accuracy and consistency of what was recorded is so on par with it. I mean, it's just, you know, and she was known as one take Karen. I mean, she just needed one take. That was it. And that's not easy to do. I mean, doing videos for for YouTube. I think the one I did 2 days ago for the UHQR $150 thing was a one take. Um, I had a couple edits because I cut out a couple of little things that I didn't want in there, but I mean, I just kind of went through it. But that doesn't happen that often at all. Carpenter's Christmas album. Yeah. Yeah, I have the in that video. I don't mean to sound like I'm promoting my channel, but I guess I am. But in that video I have an isolation on Merry Christmas Darling at the beginning. And yeah. And it's one thing I point out there is that, sometimes Richard's orchestration and arrangements could sometimes I say overpower, but definitely, you didn't really recognize quite as much of the precision of her voice because of it. And then when you get these pulled out, it just, you just realize what really was there all along. But they both, they both were strong in their own discipline. That's for sure. But that's a group that, to me, there's not really a lot of high end um, vinyl on them either. The audiophile series out of Canada, I've got the greatest hits of that. It sounds really good, but but the originals aren't bad at all because Grundman did all those. So I mean, they're not bad at all. But um, well, that's interesting about the opera singer thing. Wow. But you know who is an operatic trained singer? Cyndi Lauper, ironically enough. And she has one hell of a voice, can hold a note forever. I mean, so there you go. Wonder what Chad's finished product would compare to Elliot Shiner's 5.1 surround sound of. Flip, can you confirm what your product you're talking about there, just so I'm sure? Is it animals or? All right, cheers from California. Thanks, Quick Spec, for joining. I'll be getting off here in a few minutes. He thought it was a big mistake letting that go. She was a damn good drummer. Oh, shit. Yeah, she was a good drummer. Yeah, no, yeah. She did that, in their shows. She, the Vegas shows or whatever they did, concerts. She played some, and yeah, she was no slouch whatsoever. Yeah, there you go, Jerry. Yeah, and I mean, I'm not a big like jazz guy, but man, some jazz I can sit and listen to, and I really appreciate the sound. I appreciate the instrumentation, classical, same way. I really appreciate the recording and that can really be great. But just to sit and listen to it all the time, no, it's not me. Gaucho, man, I've really grown to love that album more and more. I guess I didn't play it as much as Asia and Can't Buy a Thrill, I guess, but Asia, kind of, it seems like I think it's a little old, a little rote. It's been kind of overhyped, of course, I think, but I think Gaucho is underhyped. So, right, Jim? Calling Occupants. Yeah, wasn't that a really different song, for them to do, of course, right? Yeah. That was it Klaatu that made that originally, I think. Um, but that was a kind of brave for them to do, really out of their norm. Yeah, Cindy's yeah, she's and if you start listening to some of her stuff and how long she holds notes and stuff, it starts to make sense. The other really good singer is Tracy Ullman. She is a really good singer. She's a great comedian. She's a great actress. I mean, Tracy Ullman is just a really underrated person, I think. I just really enjoy the hell out of her. Her albums are fun. I mean, they're just kind of poppy, but they're very, fun. So, yeah, I can't wait to hear Gaucho. Yeah, me too. Yeah, you're right, John. Karen didn't want to go out front. She had some of the self-esteem. Frankly, what I've read of her family life and her mother and things. I mean, I could see that she had issues, and I get it. But I mean, but she did it beautifully. She just was treated poorly by the people that should have loved her the most, I think, including when she got married. Poor girl. Uh, it just I don't know, that whole story just always breaks my heart. But Tracy, Yeah, I don't get that about her, Tracy. I mean, I don't know. There's just when you think of girls just want to have fun, you think of Tracy Ullman and Cyndi Lauper. Man, those two, when they're just like they are just and two great voices. Oh gosh, yeah, Pretzel Logic's probably underrated too. Yeah, I think that's a pretty strong album too. But it suffers from too many times of hearing Ricky Don't Lose That Number or something. It seems like sometimes there's a song that can really just kind of in it. But in fairness, I mean, let's face it, we hear a lot of songs off of Can't Buy a Thrill, but I've never been turned off by it. I don't know what it is. That album just to me has always been a 10. And all 10 songs are great, and I could listen to them any amount of times. Glamour Profession, yeah. Yeah, so that's the thing. There's so much good music out there. So many good artists, and we sometimes get down to, how do I put it? I guess I would say splitting hairs sometimes on some things, like the quality of the high end vinyl and these kind of things. But how long he thinks it will take to get all the Dan done? I think that the plan, I think, is to get the first two out before the end of this year. So you got five left. 80, approximately, you know, 80 days, or between 75 and 90 days or whatever. So you're looking at just over a year. I think ideally, if they could get them all done, released by the end of 2023, that would be great. But that's going to be an issue of pressing time and those kind of things. I don't know. Again, I think there's going to be this choreography between Universal and them on releasing them coincidentally. So it's not all in his decision path. So let's say Precision in Canada can't get theirs out till a certain date, or let's say they're wanting to go sooner and Chad can't be ready, or whatever it is. I mean, there still has to be a choreography of that has to occur. But I'd say that, yeah, at least it'll be a little longer than a year actually when you look at it. But I think if they were able to pull them off by the end of next year, that would be good. That would be great. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, I've never heard the 74 live set. Yeah, there's supply chains, there's pressing time, in the plant. Chad's trying to get up to 3 shifts. He's at 2. There's serious manpower issues getting people. That's they've had fairly good supply chain of product. Now parts on some things, like even like pressing machines and have to get made custom or whatever. That's can be a little more difficult. But the actual Neotech, I think they've been pretty good on the raw material side of it. But any of that can change. You know what I mean? It can, for a lot of different reasons. Global impact. I mean, this winter, if there's a lot of energy issues, Europe, or is that going to cause places to have to shut down a few weeks here and there to be able to maintain operations 2 weeks out of a month versus 4? I mean, I don't know. There's all sorts of variables that can happen, let alone, of course, any of the war conflict kind of stuff. And there's all sorts of variables, but that would be best. That's my homework for tonight. Look up Steely Dan. Thank you. I need homework. Oh, well, I got to look that up, and I also have the other one marked to look up too, the newer one. So, but that's great, guys. We've been an hour and a half, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you guys always for joining me. Again, if you do have any questions, um, I had some emails come that got blocked, and I'm trying to figure out why they went to my junk folder. But if you did email me and I didn't respond, that's probably why. But I have to keep checking that. But I do appreciate it. Again, there is a poll on the community tab about next videos, what you might like to see. If you want to participate in that, I'd appreciate it. So thank you guys. Have a good evening. Stay safe. Hug your kids, hug your family, hug your mother-in-law, do a nice thing. Take care. See you guys. Bye-bye.